Mark Twain, Selected Works. Letter from Carson City. Carson, Saturday night.
Editor's Enterprise. I feel very much as if I had just awakened out of a long sleep. I attribute it to the fact that I have slept the greater part of the time for the last 2 days and nights. On Wednesday, I sat up all night in Virginia in order to be up early enough to take the 5 o'clock stage on Thursday morning. I was on time. It was a great success. I had a cheerful trip down to Carson in company with that incessant talker, Joseph T. Goodman. I never saw him flooded with such a flow of spirits before. He restrained his conversation, though, until we had traveled 3 or 4 miles and were just crossing the divide between Silver City and Spring Valley, when he thrust his head out of the dark stage and allowed a pallid light from the coach lamp to illuminate his features for a moment, after which he returned to darkness again and sighed and said, "Damn it," with some asperity. I asked him who he meant it for, and he said, "The weather out there." As we approached Carson at about 7:30 o'clock, he thrust his head out again and gazed earnestly in the direction of that city, after which he took it in again with his nose very much frosted. He propped the end of that organ upon the end of his finger and looked down pensively upon it, which had the effect of making him appear cross-eyed, and remarked, "Oh, damn it," with great bitterness. I asked him what he was up to this time, and he said, "A cold, damp fog. It is worse than the weather." This was his last. He never spoke again in my hearing. He went on over the mountains with a lady fellow passenger from here. That will stop his clatter, you know, for he seldom speaks in the presence of ladies. In the evening, I felt a mighty inclination to go to a party somewhere. There was to be one at Governor J. Neely Johnson's, and I went there and asked permission to stand around a while. This was granted in the most hospitable manner, and visions of plain quadrilles soothed my weary soul. I felt particularly comfortable, for if there is one thing more grateful to my feelings than another, it is a new house. A large house with its ceilings embellished with snowy moldings, its floors growing with warm-tinted carpets, with cushioned chairs and sofas to sit on, and a piano to listen to, with fires so arranged that you can see them and know that there is no humbug about it, with walls garnished with pictures, and above all, mirrors, wherein you may gaze and always find something to admire, you know. I have a great regard for a good house, and a girlish passion for mirrors. Horace Smith, Esquire, is also very fond of mirrors. He came and looked in the glass for an hour with me. Finally, it cracked. The night was pretty cold, and Horace Smith's reflection was split right down the center. But where his face had been, the damage was greatest. 100 cracks converged from his reflected nose like spokes from the hub of a wagon wheel. It was the strangest freak the weather has done this winter, and yet the parlor seemed very warm and comfortable, too. About 9 o'clock, the Unreliable came and asked Governor Johnson to let him stand on the porch. That creature has got more impudence than any person I ever saw in my life. Well, he stood and flattened his nose against the parlor window and looked hungry and vicious. He always looks that way, until Colonel Musser arrived with some ladies, when he actually fell in their wake and came swaggering in, looking as if he thought he had been anxiously expected. He had on my fine kid boots, and my plug hat, and my white kid gloves, with slices of his prodigious hands grinning through the bursted seams, and my heavy gold repeater, which I had been offered thousands and thousands of dollars for, many and many a time. He took these articles out of my trunk at Washoe City about a month ago, when we went out there to report the proceedings of the convention. The Unreliable intruded himself upon me in his cordial way and said, "How are you, Mark, old boy? When'd you come down? It's brilliant, ain't it? Appear to enjoy themselves, don't they? Lend a fellow 2 bits, can't you?" He always winds up his remarks that way. He appears to have an insatiable craving for 2 bits. The music struck up just then and saved me. The next moment I was far, far at sea in a plain quadrille. We carried it through with distinguished success. That is, we got as far as balance around and half a man left when I smelled hot whiskey punch, or something of that nature. I tracked the scent through several rooms, and finally discovered the large bowl from whence it emanated. I found the omnipresent Unreliable there also. He set down an empty goblet and remarked that he was diligently seeking the gentleman's dressing room. I would have shown him where it was, but it occurred to him that the supper table and the punch bowl ought not to be left unprotected. Wherefore we stayed there and watched them until the punch entirely evaporated. A servant came in then to replenish the bowl, and we left the refreshments in his charge. We probably did wrong, but we were anxious to join the hazy dance. The dance was hazier than usual after that. 16 couples on the floor at once, with a few dozen spectators scattered around, is calculated to have that effect in a brilliantly lighted parlor, I believe. Everything seemed to buzz, at any rate. After all, the modern dances had been danced several times. The people adjourned to the supper room. I found my wardrobe out there, as usual, with the Unreliable in it. His old distemper was upon him. He was desperately hungry. I never saw a man eat as much as he did in my life. I have the various items of his supper here in my notebook. First he ate a plate of sandwiches. Then he ate a handsomely iced pound cake. Then he gobbled a dish of chicken salad, after which he ate a roast pig. After that a quantity of blancmange. Then he threw in several glasses of punch to fortify his appetite, and finished his monstrous repast with a roast turkey. Dishes of brandy grapes and jellies and such things, and pyramids of fruits melted away before him as shadows fly at the sun's approach. I am of the opinion that none of his ancestors were present when the 5,000 were miraculously fed in the old scriptural times. I base my opinion upon the 12 baskets of scraps and the little fishes that remained over after that feast. If the Unreliable himself had been there, though provisions would just about have held out, I think. After supper, the dancing was resumed, and after a while, the guests indulged in music to a considerable extent. Mrs. J. sang a beautiful Spanish song. Miss R., Miss T., Miss P., and Miss S. sang a lovely duet. Horace Smith, Esquire, sang, "I'm sitting out in the stile, Mary," with a sweetness and tenderness of expression which I have never heard surpassed. Colonel Musser sang "From Greenland's Icy Mountains" so fervently that every heart in that assemblage was purified and made better by it. Mrs. T. and Miss C. and Mrs. T. and Mrs. G. sang "Meet Me by Moonlight Alone" charmingly. Judge Dixon sang "O Charming May" with great vivacity and artistic effect. Joe Winters and Hal Clayton sang the Marseille hymn in French, and did it well. Mr. Wasson sang "Call Me Pet Names" with his usual excellence. Wasson has a cultivated voice and a refined musical taste, but like Judge Brumfield, he throws so much operatic affectation into his singing that the beauty of his performance is sometimes marred by it. I could not help noticing this fault when Judge Broomfield sang "Rock Me to Sleep, Mother." William M. Gillespie sang "Thou hast wounded the spirit that loved thee" gracefully and beautifully, and wept at the recollection of the circumstance which he was singing about. Up to this time I had carefully kept the Unreliable in the background, fearful that, under the circumstances, his insanity would take a musical turn. And my prophetic soul was right. He eluded me and planted himself at the piano. When he opened his cavernous mouth and displayed his slanting and scattered teeth, the effect upon that convivial audience was as if the gates of a graveyard with its crumbling tombstones had been thrown open in their midst. Then he shouted something about he would not live alway, and if I ever heard anything absurd in my life, that was it. He must have made up that song as he went along. Why, there was no more sense in it and no more music than there is in his ordinary conversation. The only thing in the whole wretched performance that redeemed it for a moment was something about the few lucid moments that dawned on us here. That was all right, because the lucid moments that dawn on that Unreliable are almighty few, I can tell you. I wish one of them would strike him while I am here, and prompt him to return my valuables to me. I doubt if he ever gets lucid enough for that, though. After the Unreliable had finished squawking, I sat down to the piano and sang. However, what I sang is of no consequence to anybody. It was only a graceful little gem from the horse opera. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, the pleasant party broke up and the crowd of guests distributed themselves around town to their respective homes. And after thinking the fun all over again, I went to bed at 4 o'clock. So, having been awake 48 hours, I slept 48 in order to get even again, which explains the proposition I began this letter with. Yours dreamily, Mark Twain. February 3, 1863.